Sister emptied my business accounts, forged my signature on a property transfer, and vanished to Cancun with her boyfriend while I was recovering from emergency surgery. I thought I had lost everything: my catering company, my savings, the down payment I had been building for 3 years. Then my 14-year-old nephew looked up from his laptop and told me he had been watching her for weeks. 4 days later, my sister called me screaming from a resort lobby because her credit card had just been cut in half in front of a room full of strangers. Have you ever worked yourself into the ground for something, only to have the person who watched you build it decide they deserved it more? Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I want to know who's out there with me. My name is Nora. I'm 31 years old, and for the past 6 years, I have run a catering company out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Not a cute little side hustle, a real business, licensed, insured, with a commercial kitchen lease, 2 full-time employees, and contracts with 3 corporate clients who book us for quarterly events. I built it out of nothing after my first job out of culinary school laid me off during a budget cut. I had $4,000, a used cargo van, and a reputation for showing up on time and not overcooking chicken. That was it. I ground that into something real. I am telling you this because I need you to understand exactly what was at stake. The morning I woke up in a hospital bed and reached for my phone. The surgery was an emergency appendectomy, nothing glamorous. I had been ignoring a dull ache in my lower right side for 2 days because I had a wedding rehearsal dinner to execute and a corporate lunch the following morning. By the time my sous chef, a steady woman named Bev, who has worked with me since year 1, practically dragged me to urgent care, my appendix was hours away from rupturing. I went under at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I woke up Wednesday afternoon with a drain in my side and the foggy, disconnected feeling of someone who has been chemically unconscious for the better part of a day. My phone was on the tray table beside me. I unlocked it out of pure habit, the way you reach for water first thing in the morning without thinking. The first notification was from my bank, a wire transfer confirmation. $112,000 moved from my business operating account to an account I did not recognize. I stared at it for so long that the screen locked itself. I unlocked it again. The number did not change. I opened the full transaction history. 3 transfers, all processed between midnight and 2 in the morning, while I was unconscious on a surgical table. The operating account. The event deposit account, which held retainers from clients that I was legally obligated to return if I canceled. And the savings account I had been building for a down payment on a commercial property, a small building 2 miles from my kitchen that had come on the market 6 weeks ago, and that I had been quietly negotiating to buy. $237,000, gone. Then my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. There was no message, just a photo. She was standing on a beach, white sand, turquoise water, enormous sun hat, margarita in her hand. She looked relaxed in a way I had never seen her look in Charlotte, like she had been waiting her whole life to be somewhere else, and had finally arrived. I called her immediately. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, and when I told her what I was looking at, there was a pause that lasted just a beat too long. That pause told me everything before she said a single word. "Nora," she said, "your sister has been struggling, you know that. She needed a fresh start." I was lying in a hospital bed with a surgical drain in my side. My bank account had been cleaned out while I was under anesthesia. And my mother's first sentence was about my sister's struggles. I asked her what she meant by fresh start. She told me that my sister had mentioned a business opportunity, something about a boutique rental property in Mexico, and that she deserved a chance the same way I had gotten one. I asked my mother if she knew about the wire transfers. Another pause, shorter this time, but still there. "She said you had agreed to it," my mother said. "She said you had talked about it before your surgery." I had not talked to my sister in 11 days before I went under that Tuesday night. The last conversation we'd had was a 10-minute call about our grandmother's birthday dinner. We had not discussed wire transfers. We had not discussed Mexico. We had not discussed anything involving my business accounts. because my sister had no role in my business. She never had. What she did have was a key to my apartment. I had given it to her 8 months ago when her lease fell through, and she needed a place to stay for what she told me would be 2 weeks. She stayed for 4 months. During that time, I was working. I was always working. She was there when I wasn't, moving through my space, using my kitchen, watching me answer emails and sign documents and log into accounts at my desk. I had not thought anything of it at the time. She was my sister. I asked to speak with the hospital's patient advocate about getting access to a phone line and a computer. They brought me a laptop on a rolling cart within the hour, which I think surprised them. Most people in my situation ask for more pain medication or a better pillow. I asked for a computer. I pulled up my business accounts, my email, my document storage. The wire transfers had been authorized using my login credentials, which my sister could have watched me enter any number of times. The digital signature on the transfer authorization matched my legal name, but I had not signed it. Then I found the property transfer document, the commercial building I had been negotiating to buy. Someone had submitted a counteroffer on my behalf, using a digitally forged version of my signature, lowering my offer by $40,000 and adding a clause that redirected any accepted contract to a shell LLC I had never heard of. The LLC had been registered in Florida 4 weeks ago. The registered agent's address was a mailbox store in Sarasota. The name on the filing was not mine. I sat with that information for a long time. The room was quiet except for the sound of the IV pump and someone's television down the hall. I was still in a hospital gown. My incision hurt when I breathed too deeply. I called Bev. I told her what I had found. She was silent for a moment, and then she said, "Nora, I need to tell you something." She had noticed my sister at the commercial kitchen 2 weeks earlier, on a Sunday afternoon when the kitchen was supposed to be locked. She had assumed I had given my sister permission to be there. She hadn't mentioned it because she didn't want to seem like she was reporting on family. "She was at your desk," Bev said. She had a folder. I asked Bev to hold off on telling anyone else and to keep the business running normally for the next 48 hours. Then I called my attorney. Then I called the bank's fraud department. Then I discharged myself from the hospital against the advice of 2 nurses and a resident who used the phrase "significant risk of complication" 3 times in 4 minutes. I drove home. I should not have been driving. My incision was held together with surgical glue and 3 strips of medical tape, and every speed bump felt like a minor catastrophe. But I needed to be in my own space, at my own desk, looking at my own files. My nephew was in my living room when I walked through the door. He was staying with me for the week, a plan that had been in place before my surgery because my sister had asked me to watch him while she sorted out some things, which I now understood to mean while she prepared to rob me and leave the country. He was sitting cross-legged on my couch with his laptop open, 3 browser tabs visible from where I was standing, and a legal pad covered in handwriting on the cushion beside him. "Aunt Nora," he said. He looked at me the way teenagers look at adults when they are about to say something they know will be surprising. Careful. A little proud. "I need to show you something." I lowered myself onto the couch, trying not to wince. "Okay." He turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a detailed log. Timestamps, IP addresses, browser session data, application activity. My nephew is 14 and has been interested in network security since he was 11. His father, my sister's ex-husband, worked in IT infrastructure before they split up, and my nephew had been learning from him and from every YouTube tutorial and online course he could find since he was old enough to have a laptop. "I noticed Mom was using your laptop a lot," he said, like, more than made sense. "She said she was just checking her email, but her phone was right there, so I installed a keylogger. I know I probably should have told you, but I wanted to see what she was actually doing." He had installed it 6 weeks ago. He had a complete record of every keystroke my sister had made on my laptop from that point forward. The banking credentials. The document platform she had used to forge the signature on the property transfer. The email she had sent from an account designed to look like mine, authorizing the wire transfers to a third party she had described in the email as a secured investment vehicle. He had also found the LLC filing. He had traced the registered agent address, run it against public records databases, and found that the same mailbox store address had been used in 2 previous fraud cases in Florida, both involving real estate wire fraud, both resulting in civil judgments that had gone unpaid. "She's done this before," he said. "Not her specifically, but whoever she's working with has done this before." I looked at him for a long moment. He was 14. He was sitting in my apartment, having spent what I could only imagine was a significant number of hours building a meticulous, time-stamped record of his own mother committing fraud. His expression was steady, not cold. He loved his mother, and I knew that. But clear-eyed in the way that some people are when they have already processed something painful and come out the other side. "Does this help?" he said. I told him it helped more than he could possibly know. The next 2 days were controlled, deliberate, and exhausting. My attorney filed an emergency fraud report with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. The bank's fraud team, presented with the keylogger records and the forged signature documentation, froze the receiving accounts within 6 hours. The funds had not been moved again. My sister, or whoever she was working with, had apparently been waiting to see if the transfers would be flagged before attempting to access the money. They had been flagged. My attorney also contacted the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, given the interstate nature of the LLC and the connection to prior fraud cases in Florida. A federal wire fraud referral takes time, but it was in motion. On the 3rd day, I got a call from my sister. I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee. I was not supposed to be drinking because I was still on post-surgical antibiotics, and my phone lit up with her name. I looked at my nephew, who was at the kitchen counter eating cereal. He raised his eyebrows. "Answer it," he said. "P upset, don't tell her anything." I answered. She was at the resort. I could hear music and ambient noise behind her. A pool bar maybe, or an outdoor restaurant. Her voice was bright and loose in the way that people sound when they have been drinking in a warm climate and are feeling generous toward the world. "Hey," she said. "How are you feeling? Mom said your surgery went okay." I told her I was okay. My voice came out flat and tired, which required no acting because I was flat and tired. "Good," she said. "That's good. Listen, I wanted to call because..." She paused. "I know the timing wasn't great. I want you to know it wasn't personal, Nora. You've always had so much more than you needed, and I've been struggling for years. It just felt like you would have helped me anyway if I had asked. Right? You always helped me." I did not say anything. "The money is going into something real," she continued. "A property. Something that will make a return. You'll get paid back." Her voice had taken on a slight edge, the way it always did when she was trying to convince me of something, and could feel that I wasn't convinced. I just needed a chance. "You got your chance. I deserved mine." I said, "I hope you're having a good trip." She paused. "That's all you're going to say?" "Have a good trip," I said again, and I ended the call. My nephew looked at me from across the kitchen. "She has no idea." "No," I said, "she doesn't." That evening, I sent my attorney the recording of the call. I was in a one-party consent state. Along with the full documentation package my nephew had assembled, the bank confirmed the following morning that the freeze on the receiving accounts had been upgraded to a hold pending law enforcement review, meaning my sister could not access a single dollar of what she had transferred. Then we waited. It did not take long. The resort she was staying at was a large all-inclusive property on the Riviera Maya. My sister and her boyfriend had booked a premium suite. 5 nights, full board, spa access. The kind of package that runs close to $4,000 when you factor in the incidentals. They had put it on a credit card that was drawing from one of the transferred accounts. On the 4th day, they tried to extend their stay by another week. The card was declined. According to what I pieced together later from my sister's own frantic messages, sent in a span of about 40 minutes starting at 2 in the afternoon Central Time. They had gone to the front desk to extend the booking. The card was declined on the first attempt. The desk agent, professionally, asked if she would like to try another card. My sister, apparently not yet alarmed, tried the same card again. Declined again. Her boyfriend tried his card. Declined. The front desk manager came over. He explained, in the measured tone of someone who has had this conversation before, that their current balance for the premium suite and the various charges accrued over 4 days, room service, spa services, a private excursion, was substantial, and that their card issuer had flagged the account and suspended access pending a fraud investigation. He asked them to either provide an alternate form of payment to settle the existing balance, or accompany a staff member to the business office to discuss resolution. My sister, according to her own messages, told the manager there had been a mistake and asked him to run the card again. He declined to do so. Her boyfriend tried to pay with a secondary card he apparently had not realized was also drawing from a frozen account. Also declined. By this point, there were other guests nearby. My sister later said she felt like everyone in the lobby was staring at them. They probably were. She called me from the business office of the resort, 3 hours after the front desk incident. The bright, loose tone from the previous call was gone. She was crying, and not the careful kind of crying. The kind that comes out ragged and loud when someone is genuinely frightened. "Nora," she said, "I need you to help me. Something is wrong with the accounts. I can't access any of the money. We're stuck here and we owe the resort over $6,000. And I don't know what to do." I let her finish. Then I said, "I know about the wire transfers. I know about the property transfer. I know about the LLC. I have the documentation, and so does my attorney and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg PD and the FBI Fraud Referral Unit." She went very quiet. "The accounts are frozen," I said. "The money is not accessible to you, and it will not be accessible to you. The fraud hold will remain in place while the investigation is open. I don't know how long that will take." "Nora, I'm not going to pay your resort bill," I said. "I'm not going to help you get home. I'm not going to help you with any of this. I'm your sister." "You forged my signature," I said. "You did it while I was in surgery. You transferred money that includes client retainers I'm legally responsible for. You could have cost me my business and my professional reputation." I paused. "You also left your son in my apartment. Your 14-year-old son." She didn't say anything for a long moment. "He helped me," I said. "He's the reason I have documentation. He's the reason the bank moved as fast as it did." Another silence. When she finally spoke again, her voice had changed. The frightened quality had been replaced by something colder. "He did what?" "He was paying attention," I said. "He noticed things. He's a smart kid. You might want to think about that." I ended the call. My mother came to my apartment that evening. She was different from the phone call. Smaller somehow. Her certainty from before replaced by something closer to dread. She sat at my kitchen table, and she said she was sorry, and I believed that she was sorry, though I was also aware that people can be sorry about consequences, without being sorry about choices. She had known, not the full scope of it, she insisted. Not the forged signatures, not the LLC, not the scope of the fraud. But she had known that my sister had been planning to borrow money from my accounts. She had known that my sister had been planning access from watching me, and she had not told me. I asked her why. She said she thought my sister deserved a chance. She said I had so much, and my sister had so little. And sometimes family means giving even when you don't know you're giving. I looked at her for a long time after she said that. "I had so much," I said, "because I worked for it, every day, for 6 years. While she was living in my apartment, I was building the thing she took from me. And you knew she was going to take it, and you said nothing." My mother didn't argue. That was the most unsettling thing. She had no argument. She just looked at the table. I told her I needed her to leave. I told her I wasn't angry in a way that would fade in a week and become normal again. I told her I needed significant time and distance, and that I would reach out when I was ready, and that she should not contact me in the meantime. She left. My nephew watched from the hallway, and when I closed the door, he came and sat beside me on the couch without saying anything, which was exactly the right thing to do. My sister and her boyfriend spent 2 days in the resort business office, negotiating a payment arrangement before his parents in Tucson wired him enough money to cover the existing balance. They flew home on a basic economy ticket that his mother apparently purchased for them. When they landed in Charlotte, there were no federal agents waiting. The investigation was ongoing and no arrest had been made yet. But my attorney had filed a civil suit, and my sister was served within 48 hours of returning. The criminal case moved more slowly the way federal cases do, but it moved. The connection to prior Florida fraud cases gave investigators a thread to pull, and what they found at the end of it involved the network of wire fraud schemes that my sister had been a peripheral participant in for nearly 2 years. She had not originated it, but she had participated knowingly, and that was enough. She was charged 7 months later. Her boyfriend took a plea deal. She did not initially, and then she did. 6 months into pre-trial proceedings, when her attorney made clear that the evidence was not ambiguous and that a trial outcome was unlikely to be favorable, she received a suspended sentence with 5 years of probation, full restitution ordered, and a federal fraud conviction that would follow her for the rest of her professional life. The civil suit settled before it reached trial. The recovered funds combined with the settlement covered the transferred amounts in full. It took time, and it cost me in legal fees, and there were months in the middle where I was running the business on fumes and faith and Bev's extraordinary loyalty. But it came back. The commercial property I had been negotiating to buy, the one my sister had tried to redirect through her fraudulent LLC, had been taken off the market during the chaos of all this, then relisted 8 months later at a price $30,000 lower than the original ask. I made an offer. The seller accepted it within 24 hours. I signed the paperwork at my attorney's office on a Thursday afternoon in October. Real ink on real paper. My own signature. The one that belongs to me. Afterward, I picked my nephew up from school and took him to get a burger, and we sat in a booth by the window while the light went gold outside, and I told him that none of what happened after his mother left would have been possible without what he did. He looked uncomfortable the way teenagers do when they're being thanked for something meaningful. He picked at his fries. "She's still my mom," he said. "I know," I said. "I don't regret it," he said. I know that's complicated." "It is," I said. "And you did the right thing anyway. That's a hard thing to do." He nodded, looking out the window. "The thing I have learned, the thing I keep coming back to, is that the people who take from you rarely believe they are taking. They have built an entire story in which they are owed, in which your success is surplus, and their need is debt, and the transfer between the two is simply balance." My sister did not think of herself as a thief. She thought of herself as someone finally collecting what she was owed. The story is always the dangerous part, more dangerous than the act itself, because the story makes the act feel justified, and justified people do not stop. What stopped her was documentation, evidence. A 14-year-old who noticed something was wrong and decided to pay attention. I think about that a lot. We talk so much about protecting ourselves from strangers, from outside threats, from people we can see coming. We almost never talk about building protection into the places we feel safest. Our homes, our families, our most trusted relationships. We don't want to believe we need it there. But sometimes the person who has the key to your apartment is exactly the person who needs to be watched. I'm sitting on the deck of the commercial property now, my property, watching the contractor walk the interior for the renovation estimate. The afternoon is cool and clear and smells like sawdust and possibility. My nephew is at school doing well, living with his father, and managing the complexity of his situation with more grace than most adults I know. My mother and I are in careful, limited contact. Some things take a long time. Maybe they always will. My sister and I have not spoken since the day I told her about the freeze. I don't know if we ever will. I hold that question loosely, the way you hold something that might still be alive and might not. I don't have an answer yet. I don't think I need one right now. What I have is a building with good bones and south-facing windows and enough square footage for a proper prep kitchen and a small event space. What I have is Bev, who has already started designing the kitchen layout on graph paper she brings to work in her jacket pocket. What I have is a business I built from $4,000 and a used cargo van that survived the worst thing my family ever did to me, and that is still standing. That is enough. For now, that is more than enough. If you've ever had to choose between protecting what you built and protecting a relationship that was slowly draining you, leave a red heart in the comments. And if this story hit something real, like and subscribe. There are more stories here, and every single one of them belongs to someone who decided to stop being the one who pays for everyone else's freedom. I keep thinking about the moment I walked through my own front door, still in post-surgical tape, and found my nephew sitting on my couch with a legal pad full of handwriting and 3 browser tabs open. He wasn't waiting to be rescued. He had already been working. That image stays with me more than anything else from those weeks, more than the hospital notification, more than my sister's beach photo, more than the sound of her crying from that resort business office. Because what he did required all 3 things that I think actually matter in a person, and he was 14 years old when he did them. He noticed something was wrong and chose to act on it instead of explaining it away. That's a harder thing than it sounds. Most of us, adults included, will find a reason not to see what we're seeing when seeing it means a painful confrontation with someone we love. He saw his mother doing something she shouldn't, and instead of protecting himself from the discomfort of knowing, he paid closer attention. He kept records. He built a case. That kind of honesty with yourself, the refusal to look away from an uncomfortable truth because the truth involves someone close to you, is the foundation of real moral clarity. Not the easy kind you display when the stakes are low. The hard kind. The kind that costs you something. And then there was the intelligence of what he actually built. He didn't panic. He didn't confront her directly. He understood at 14 that premature confrontation would only give her time to cover her tracks. So he waited, documented, and assembled something that held up under legal scrutiny. I have worked with adults who couldn't think that strategically under pressure. He did it quietly, in my living room, while eating cereal and going to school in the morning like nothing was happening. That's not just cleverness. That's disciplined thinking, the kind that knows the difference between being smart and being effective. And the courage it took. He knew what turning over that evidence would mean for his mother. He knew it would change things between them permanently, in ways that couldn't be undone. He did it anyway, because some things matter more than comfort, more than keeping the peace, more than protecting yourself from the grief of having to watch consequences arrive. I think about my sister sometimes and I don't feel what I expected to feel. I expected anger, or grief, or that particular exhaustion that comes after a long betrayal. What I feel mostly is clarity. She built a story in which taking from me was justified. And she believed that story completely. The story was the problem. The story let her do what she did without experiencing herself as someone doing harm. The building 2 miles from my old kitchen has south-facing windows and high ceilings, and room for everything I've been planning. I signed the paperwork with my own hand. I think about that sometimes. The physical act of it, ink on paper, my name in my own handwriting, on something that is genuinely mine. You don't get to keep what you take. That's not a curse or a cosmic punishment. It's just how things tend to work when you trace the line far enough. What you build with honesty and sustained effort, and the willingness to face hard things, that holds. My nephew is doing well. He carries something complicated with him, and I think he will for a long time. But he also carries the knowledge of what he did when it mattered. That's not nothing. That is in fact everything.